Once again, my dear friends, a very heartfelt welcome to you. And uh, you probably know, some of you know, this is Yom Kippur. And in our house of worship, we always honor all the major traditions. In fact, we do this in the entire city. We were supposed to have had a major meeting tomorrow to talk about a citywide Seattle program called Inter-Spirituality Summit. And then it was pointed out to us by our Jewish friends that it is Yom Kippur, and we must honor that. So we actually postponed that meeting till next week. And whenever we do a program on these major holidays, in this case, Yom Kippur, we start by focusing on the theme of that particular holy day. So Yom Kippur is a very important day in the Jewish tradition. It's a day of, a day-long fast starting this evening till tomorrow evening, a time of confession, a time of atonement. So let us focus on this topic of forgiveness. And the first category would be forgiveness, and think about it, forgiveness from God, from spirit, or whatever your belief system is, something higher than human personality. So for me as a Muslim, there's a verse in the Quran that says, say, in Arabic it's kul, say you who have transgressed against your own soul, despair not of the mercy of God, for God forgives all wrongdoings. Say you who have transgressed against your own soul, despair not of the mercy of God, of whatever your belief system is, Jesus, Buddha, Elohim. For spirit forgives all wrongdoings. To which Prophet Muhammad said, yes, that is true, but you must also make an intention not to return to the wrongdoing. Not to return to the wrongdoing, just like, and his famous words are, as milk returns not to the udder. Just as milk returns not to the udder, udder. And I'm remembering there's a word in the Jewish spiritual tradition, teshnuva. I think it's called teshnuva, which means returning. Well, actually, it's atonement, teshnuva, but the root is returning to the path of righteousness. And I remember my Christian friends always reminding me of the words of St. Paul that every sinner has a past. No, every saint has a past. Every sinner has a future. Every saint has a past, every sinner a future. So what are some things that we want forgiveness from God? Prophet Muhammad, he cried out very beautifully, forgive me, God, for I have not known you as I should have. We have not known you as we could have. Rumi, he says, God, please forgive me. Do you know, and he tells us, do you know what hurts a soul the most? Do you know what hurts a soul the most? To have lived without tasting the water of your own essence. I became stuck in my personality, in my entire life. But I'm much more than my personality. I'm also my divine spark, my Christ nature, Buddha nature, Elohim nature, Allah nature. I never got in touch with who I really am. As a mystic say, I kept wearing masks. Rumi says, Brother Jamal, remove your masks. Remove your masks in your lifetime because your real face is so beautiful. So I never got to know myself. Please forgive me. You know, I work with Rabbi Ted Falcon and Pastor Don McKenzie. As some of you know, we're called the Interfaith Amigos. And Rabbi Ted has a pretty revolutionary, well, you know, he has his own interpretation. And he sent this out saying that, you know, Yom Kippur is traditionally considered a final judgment at the conclusion of 10 days of repentance. Standing before God in this time of judgment is an interpretation of this holiest day that has co-opted, this is Rabbi Ted Falcon's words, that has co-opted the truer, deeper, more authentic meaning of Yom Kippur. This interpretation is actually counter to and interferes with our potential for self-realization. So let me just read one more thing here. He says, Yom Kippur is actually our day of awakening. While we celebrate these energies of purification and awakening together this week, our own personal Yom Kippur, our own personal holiest day of the year, is the day, the moment we realize who we really are. So, you know, one forgiveness is, oh God, forgive me. I never got to know who I really am. That 14th century sage Hafiz says, do you know, Jamal, this is poetry, that your greatest regret on your deathbed might be, oh universe, I did not kiss you enough. Oh universe, I did not kiss you enough. And what does that mean to you? You got to have your own understanding of that. Oh universe, I did not kiss you enough. I love Rumi's words who says, you know, if a drop of the wine of vision could rinse your eyes, if a drop of the wine of vision could rinse your eyes, everywhere you looked, you would weep with wonder. Some have told me, you know, when I do counseling with congregants, you know, I'm so sorry, I'm in my 70s, 80s. I never followed my own passion. I lived somebody else's life. Oh God, forgive me. I never lived my own life. This reminds me of the poetry of Tagore, the wonderful Indian, you know, contemporary poet who was in the 20th century from Bengal, Rabindranath Tagore, who says, you know, I spend my days and nights stringing and unstringing my instrument. I spend my days and nights stringing and unstringing my instrument, but the song I came here to sing remains unsung. Forgive me, God, I did not sing the song I came here to sing, for which you sent me here. Maybe I was not of service as much as I could have been. I was too focused on myself, which is good, but I became greedy. I forgot the joy that service brings in my life. Remember Tagore again? Some of you know it by heart. I slept and dreamt life was joy. I slept and dreamt life was joy. I awoke and found life was service. I served, and lo, service was joy. Therefore, say the mystics, be a lamp, a lifeboat, or a ladder in your life. And by the way, Jamal, all the mystics say, did you do some real service? Or were you scared when you saw some evil doing, some oppression, some tyranny? When you saw all of that, the Quran says, God gave you 2 eyes, 2 lips, and a tongue, but you did not climb the steep ascent. You chose the easy path. What is that about? Well, there's a saying of the Prophet Muhammad who says, when you see evil, oppression, tyranny, use your hands, meaning get involved, do something. If you cannot do that, use your mouth, meaning speak out against the tyranny, the oppression, the evil. If you cannot do that, then yes, from your heart, send light, send love, send prayers. But he adds, in this instance, it is the weakest form of faith. Oh God, forgive me. I did not really combat, speak out against evil, oppression, tyranny in my own family, in my community, in my society, in my nation. Well, I'm in the last quarter of my life. Maybe I did not honor time. Oh God, forgive me. I love this poetry by Rumi who says, travelers, it is late. Life's sun, S-U-N, is going to set. In the brief moments you have time, please spare no effort of your wings. Then he goes on to say, death is hoarse from shouting. Death is hoarse from shouting. From so many death blows, death's drum skin has split. From so many blows, death's drum skin has split. But Jamal, you remained enmeshed in trivialities, and only now do you apprehend the mystery of death. Anyhow, maybe I did too much hoarding, the Quran says. You were just hoarding, you were greedy. You forgot that on the day of liberation, when you die, you'll have to leave your hoarded goods and titles at your palace. You have friends, you have relatives. That's great, that's wonderful, that's beautiful, that's powerful, but they can come with you only up to your gravesite, to your burial place. Beyond that, what propels you forward is a record of your good deeds, good deeds. Okay, I've said enough. I just want you to just ponder for a few moments. If you were to ask forgiveness from God, what is it you ask forgiveness about in your life? Just ponder on that. What is it I want God to forgive in my life? Remember, God is very gracious, very compassionate. You can write it down, you can think about it, ponder on it. Just a few seconds more. Okay, now we come to forgiving others who have caused me pain, caused me suffering, caused me anguish. I always remember a dream of the Prophet Muhammad where he dreamt that Moses asked God in Prophet Muhammad's dream, Moses asked God, God, who is a real spiritual human being? And apparently God answered Moses, a real spiritual being is a person when in a position of power forgives. When in a position of power forgives. Who is it you want to forgive? Who is it who has caused you pain, anger, sadness? Because there's a very important point here, which we have discussed in every single class that we have taken together, that forgiveness of the other can only work, remember, if we start the process, engage in the procedure, in the process of healing, first of all, acknowledging, healing, and integrating that pain, that sadness, that anger, that wound. Without acknowledging, without honoring, without healing, without integrating that wound, that wound of pain, sadness, anguish, forgiveness is not possible. If you remember that wonderful saying of the Buddha, he said, if you just forgive without taking care, without healing that pain of yours, it is like whitewashing a burning house. It is like whitewashing a burning house. Therefore, in all our classes, we have talked about this technique of sacred holding, of honoring, healing our difficult feelings and integrating them. That's a process called sacred holding. I think in every class we've talked about the story of the Prophet Muhammad when he encountered this person who told him that, he was the one who murdered his uncle, the Prophet's most favorite uncle, and asked for forgiveness. And Prophet Muhammad said, of course, I forgive you, but don't come into my presence for at least a year or so. Why did he say that? Because the Prophet, as a human being, needed time to acknowledge, to honor, to heal, to integrate the pain he felt upon the death of his uncle, who was murdered by this person. I think his name was Wahshi. You probably have read of medical intuitives like Carolyn Myss, and I forget the name of that wonderful gynecologist doctor. Anyway, they talk about the fact that if we avoid our wounds, I'm talking about emotional wounds, deny them, they show up as illnesses, diseases in our physical body. So again, I want you to think about, who is it in my life I want to forgive? But what is the pain I have within me? And have I done the work of healing it? And once you do, amazing things can happen. We have in Seattle this man from Bangladesh who actually, we know him pretty well from our house of worship here, Rais Bhunya. In September 11th, he was one of those people who was in a store when a person who was very Islamophobic, hated Muslims, he walked in the store and killed a few people, and he shot him also, thinking he was dead, but he survived. He was shot in the face. And he has terrible, even shrapnels even now in his face, but he survived. And he was able to honor his anger, heal his emotional wound, integrate it. And today he's a champion of diversity, of inclusivity. He goes around speaking about forgiveness uh, everywhere. In fact, he's got an organization called World Without Hate. And he was the one who, this was in Texas, it happened. He was the one who kept campaigning for the governor to forgive the person who shot him. He was not successful in postponing or uh, not having that execution, but there was a wonderful conversation between him and that perpetrator. And the perpetrator was so happy that Rais Bhuiya, that's the name of the Bangladeshi man, was doing this work. And he told him that, my childhood was terrible. And this was a conditioning I had to have hatred towards others. And he blessed Rais Bhuiya for his work, and he was executed. So, okay, just a few moments to ask yourself, who in my life do I want to forgive? And have I done or am I doing the work of healing that pain, that wound, that emotional distress I have within me? Just take a minute or so to think about it. Write some things down if you please. Okay, my dear friends, the third one, the last one of forgiveness, is asking forgiveness from others. Who is it you want to ask others to forgive you? It's interesting, in all the traditions, whether it's Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, they all say that to be able to fulfill this process of asking for forgiveness, you must genuinely feel, number one, remorse. You're really sorry. There is genuine feeling of repentance. And number two, you have to ask. Now, what if the person is no longer alive? And I've done this for decades, people coming to me and saying, this person has passed away, but I really want to ask for forgiveness for what I did. How do I do that? Well, you can do that in the imaginal world. There's a process. We have, some of you know this process, expression resolution. You can do expression resolution in the world to get closure. So number one, remorse. Number two, to ask. And number three is to make some sort of restitution. If you cheated somebody money, as best as you can, return that money sincerely. genuinely? How can you make amends? Remorse, asking, then making amends. I love the story of my dear departed friend, Robbie Fonstock, Reverend Robbie Fonstock, who was a Unity minister. And he was telling this story that when he was young, he worked in a bank, and he used to be the one who used to count the money which he used to get from all the cars who would park in those parking garages. And I forget the name of the company, huge company. So he would get huge sums of money, and his job was to count them. And in those days, they didn't have cameras to watch what he was doing, and he would quietly steal some of the money, put it in his pocket. He did this for years, and he made some good money. But after he became a minister, he really felt remorseful. Actually, even before that, he really felt, this is wrong. This happened. Of course, I was young, I was silly, I was, reckless. I was not thinking right, but this is not right. So he felt a lot of remorse. So how did he do the ask? He wrote a letter to the president of the company, I think it was in San Francisco, and confessed his misadventures and said he was really sorry for what he did. But the third thing he did was he returned all the money. And that was quite a lot of money. So he was remorseful. He wrote a letter, and he made restitution. And he felt so unburdened. The Prophet Muhammad, a few days before he died, every time he became very feeble, but every time he went for prayers, he would tell the congregation, is there anybody here I have hurt in any way, physically, emotionally, any way I have hurt you, please let me know. Is there anybody I owe money to? And they're very surprised, the Prophet talking like this. And he repeated again and again at every prayer meeting, is there anyone here I have hurt? Is there anyone here I owe money to? Please tell me. And they said, why? You're a prophet. Why are you saying these things to us? And his famous words are, it is better to blush in this world than in the next world. It is better to blush in this world than in the next world. And then one person did raise his hands and said, you do owe me some money because I was talking to you about some very poor person, and you said, okay, go and pay this person, and you never repaid me the money. And the Prophet immediately said, forgive me, and paid him the money. Another person said, one day you're walking very fast among this crowd of people and your elbow hit me, and it hurt me physically. And the Prophet Muhammad said, please forgive me. It is better to blush in this world than in the next world. I know that many of you know this story of this Hawaiian healing, Ho'oponopono. I think that's how you pronounce it. As far as I remember, the story of there was a psychiatrist who wanted to do some work in a mental asylum where he had heard that these people were really in a very bad state, and they were actually even being mistreated, but they were really in a very poor state, the inmates of the mental asylum. But they wouldn't let him go there and talk to them, but they gave him all the files of each of those inmates. And if you remember the story, he said he did this particular Hawaiian technique. He opened each file, read the biography of the inmate, and he said, I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. And he meant it. He really meant it. That we just shut them in those mental asylums. We forget about them. Just let them be. We avoid, we deny. For that, please know that I am sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you for listening to me. I love you. He did that with each file. And then guess what? I heard that the feedback came back that there was such a change in the I call them inmates or the patients in that mental asylum. So this is a very, very well-known Hawaiian mantra of healing. I've tried that with clients who come to me, if they have a heart problem or any physical ailment. I ask them to connect with their organ, talk to the organ, tell the organ I love you. And sometimes I do this hopoponono, I don't know how to pronounce it exactly. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. But more than that, I ask them to dwell on that particular organ and talk to the organ. And you can say you're sorry for having misused, overexerted, and I love you. In fact, I have had remarkable success with heart patients just by telling the heart patient to tell the heart with sincerity, in humility, again and again, meaning it, I love you, I really love you, I really love you, thank you for doing all this work, I really love you. I've had such amazing feedback that so many physical changes have occurred. So many of these arteries have, new branches have come out that make it so healthy by talking with the cells, the physical organ, both in a physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual way. Also, let's not forget, we have to ask forgiveness for our exploitation of nature, for our plunder of nature. I ask as many friends as I can. I tell myself also, Jamal, visit slaughterhouses. I love that wonderful that wonderful verse of the Beatles that if slaughterhouses had walls made of glass, we'd all be vegetarians. So I ask forgiveness of all those animals we have slaughtered, so in such inhumane conditions. Please forgive me, and thank you for your giving me sustenance. So the question right now is, who is it from whom you seek forgiveness? And remember, there's remorse, there is the asking, there is the amends, making amends, restitution. Who is it I want forgiveness from? Who is it I want that person to forgive me? Just a few more seconds. Remorse, asking, making amends, restitution. Okay, bring that to a close. Now I think we have made amends about honoring Yom Kippur. We've asked for forgiveness in those different ways. Now our main topic is this book, essentially gaining perspectives on life's perplexing questions. So very briefly, just to refresh our memory, we don't really ask deeper questions unless we have to. That is why in the traditions they say, Jamal, when does your life really start? It really starts when I become a seeker. It could be through joy. It could be through some moments of enchantment. But usually, because we are unmindful, it usually happens through a crisis. For me, death of my parents. It could be a divorce. It could be loss of health, change of circumstances, loss of fortunes. Because then what happens is deeper questions. Why me? And I need help. But deeper questions arise. In a very broad way, do you remember that for Buddha, what gained him his enlightenment was a question. And the question was, why would a mother want to give birth to a child who would invariably grow old, grow sick, and die? Hinduism, the core of Hinduism, the primary scriptures of Hinduism is really those incredible insights, heartfelt insights of ordinary men and women in the forest dwelling stage that fulfill their earthly duties, and they would ask that question in the environment of silence or remoteness. That's why it's called forest dwelling stage. The question was, what was all that about? All the dramas, melodramas in my life, mother-in-law problems, father-in-law, husband problem, wife problem, money problem. What was all that about? My birth, deaths, tragedies. What was it about? So, what is a deep spiritual question that arises within you at this stage of your life? Now, for example, we get lots of people from our community to come and ask, is there really a God? And how do I connect with this God? Why do we suffer? What is my life purpose? What happens after death? Is there an afterlife? For you, what is the most important spiritual question now, or spiritual need in your life right now? So what is the deepest, most important spiritual question now, and or spiritual need in my life right now? Be willing to be vulnerable. Okay, along with that is also more of a practical question. What is your greatest practical need at this time? I repeat, what is your greatest practical need at this time? I need more abundance in my life. I am lonely. I would like some friends. Or I have some problems. I need some advice. And you can be specific. I need some guidance. What is your greatest practical need at this time? You can be very simple, as just last few days, some people have come to me and said, I have this illness, and I want to explore naturopathic doctors or Chinese herbal medicine. Do you have any contacts? My great need is I really want to connect with alternative medicine because allopathic medicine has not worked. Yes, I need prayers, I need all of that, but I really want some help in connecting me to alternative medicine. As an example. A few weeks ago, or a few months ago, actually, somebody came and said, I have this terrible health situation. I want a circle of people just to pray for me, but fervently, sincerely, deeply, regularly. Please, can you arrange that? What is your greatest practical need at this time? The one I hear the most probably is, if I may be frank with you, I'm lonely. I just need some friends to talk to. I want a life partner. That's great. If that's your greatest need at this time. Okay, my dear friends, take your time in writing those answers to your most important spiritual question, your greatest practical need at this time. We'll take a break of just about 7.5 minutes. We'll come back and Saliju, you'll do some breathing exercise. Okay, some breathing exercise, and then we'll break out into groups. And feel free to share in the group what you have felt, what you have written, and what you want to discuss. You can choose any of those answers you have come up with from what has been asked of you today and discuss that in the group, in the breakout in groups. And that's for about 25 minutes. And for now, just take a break for 7 to 8 minutes. Thank you.